A freezing night, a girl with nothing, a shivering dog on the street. She could have turned away, but instead, she made a choice that would change everything. What happened next was beyond anyone's imagination. Some say kindness is its own reward, but for one homeless girl, a simple act of compassion unlocked a fate she never could have dreamed of. This is the incredible true story of how giving away the only thing she had, her blanket, led to something truly extraordinary. Stay with me till the end, because what happened next will leave you speechless. The city was a world of two extremes. Towering buildings with warm, glowing windows lined the streets, their insides filled with laughter, the clinking of cutlery, and the hum of a life Lily could only dream of. But down below, beneath the neon signs and the rush of people hurrying to their destinations, was a world forgotten by most, a world where the unlucky, the abandoned, and the lost barely survived. Lily was one of them. She had been for over a year now. At just 12 years old, she had seen more suffering than most people could comprehend. Her mother, her only family, was gone. The disease that took her had been cruel, slow, and merciless. There had been no money for doctors, no one to help. In the end, Lily had held her mother's cold hand in a cramped, dark alley, listening to her fading breaths, until there were none left. Then, she had been alone. No relatives came, no friends, no neighbors. The world moved on, forgetting that a little girl had been left behind. She learned fast. No one cared about a child wandering the streets. If she wanted to survive, she had to toughen up. But no matter how much she tried to convince herself, no matter how many nights she whispered, "I don't need anyone," the truth was, she did. And on this night, a night colder than any she had faced before, she wondered if she would make it till morning. The wind cut through the city like a blade. Every gust was sharp, biting into her thin sweater, numbing her fingers. She clutched her tattered blanket tightly around her shoulders. It was the only thing she had left, her last connection to warmth, to safety, to a time when she wasn't just a nameless face among the forgotten. Her stomach ached with hunger. She hadn't eaten in over a day. The stale piece of bread she had found in a dumpster yesterday was long gone, and her body was weak from exhaustion. Every muscle in her ached, her legs sore from walking, her feet numb from the cold pavement beneath her torn shoes. She wandered through the alleys, searching for a place to sleep, somewhere sheltered from the wind. But she knew the dangers of the night. There were men who lurked in the shadows, eyes sharp, voices low, waiting for someone weaker than them. There were other homeless people, too, some kind, some desperate enough to take anything you had, even if it was just a threadbare blanket. Lily knew how to stay invisible. She had learned the rules of the streets. Never talk to strangers, never make eye contact, never show weakness, and never, ever trust promises of kindness. But then she heard it, a sound so faint that at first, she thought the wind was playing tricks on her. A whimper, soft, pained, almost like a whisper. Lily turned, her breath catching in her throat. There, curled up near a dumpster, was a small, shivering dog. His body was frail, his fur so matted and dirty that it was hard to tell what color it had once been. His ribs poked through his thin frame, and his eyes, those deep, desperate eyes, locked onto hers. He whimpered again, barely lifting his head. Lily's heart clenched. She had seen suffering before. She had lived it, but somehow this was different. The dog wasn't just cold. He wasn't just hungry. He was dying. She swallowed hard, stepping closer. The dog flinched, but didn't run. Maybe he was too weak to. Maybe he had already given up. He's like me, she thought, a soul abandoned by the world. She knelt down slowly, careful not to startle him. Her breath came out in white clouds, disappearing into the freezing air. She reached out a hand, hesitant. The dog's body trembled violently. He looked at her, unsure, but didn't move away. Lily's fingers brushed against his fur, cold, damp, lifeless. He was freezing. Panic gripped her chest. She had seen what happened to people on the streets in winter. Some just didn't wake up. Their bodies would be found curled in doorways, stiff and still, as if frozen in time. This dog wouldn't make it till morning, and neither, she realized, would she. The cold was growing stronger. It was in her bones now, in her lungs, making every breath ache. If she didn't find warmth soon, she would be just like the dog, a lifeless body forgotten in an alley. She clutched her blanket tightly. It was the only thing keeping her warm. If she gave it away, she would have nothing. Nothing. Her fingers gripped the fabric, torn between two impossible choices. The dog whimpered again. Lily's eyes burned. She had nothing. She had no one. But at this moment, neither did he. And she knew, deep down, that she couldn't just walk away. Slowly, painfully, she pulled the blanket from her shoulders. The cold hit her instantly, sinking into her skin like ice. She sucked in a breath, forcing herself to move, to not second-guess what she was about to do. With shaking hands, she draped a blanket over the dog's frail body. He let out a soft, almost disbelieving sigh and curled into the warmth, his shivering slowly easing. Lily blinked back tears. She had never felt more vulnerable. Her body was already protesting the loss of heat, but she forced a small smile. "You need this more than I do," she whispered, gently stroking his head. The dog didn't speak, didn't thank her, but in the way he pressed into the blanket, the way his body finally relaxed, she knew he understood. Lily pulled her knees to her chest, curling into herself to keep warm. The night stretched on, the cold gnawing at her. Every second felt like an eternity, but she didn't regret it, because for the first time in a long time, she had done something that mattered, and she had no idea that in this very moment, fate was watching. Lily spent the rest of the night curled against a cold brick wall, her arms wrapped tightly around herself, trying to trap whatever warmth was left in her body. The absence of her blanket was a cruel reminder of the price she had paid for kindness. Her fingers were numb, her lips cracked. The freezing air bit at her skin with every gust of wind. She tried to focus on her breathing, in, out, but it wasn't helping. Her body was stiff, her muscles locked in protest against the bitter cold. Every few minutes, she had to shift positions, just to stop the unbearable aching in her bones. But through it all, she didn't regret it. She turned her head slightly, her tired eyes searching through the darkness. The dog was still there, curled up beneath the blanket she had given him. He had stopped shivering. The slow rise and fall of his tiny chest told her he was finally sleeping, finally warm. A small smile tugged at the corners of Lily's lips. She had done something good, something that mattered. But as the night stretched on, the cold became unforgiving. Lily pressed herself tighter against the wall, trying to shield herself from the wind. Her sweater, thin and full of holes, was useless against the icy night. She curled her fingers into fists, tucking them beneath her arms in an attempt to stop the numbing pain. Her stomach growled, a sharp reminder that she hadn't eaten. She shut her eyes, willing herself to sleep, but sleep wouldn't come. The street lights flickered above her, casting long shadows across the alley. Distant footsteps echoed in the silence. She forced herself to stay awake. She knew what could happen if she didn't. She had seen it before, how some people never woke up after nights like this. The cold could steal you away silently, without warning. Lily blinked, forcing herself to stay alert, but exhaustion was heavy, dragging at her eyelids, making her limbs sluggish. She didn't know how much longer she could hold on. When Lily finally opened her eyes, the city was bathed in early morning light. Her body ached. Her fingers felt stiff, like they didn't belong to her. She could barely move her legs. It took every ounce of strength just to sit up. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. Then, reality came rushing back. The alley, the cold, the hunger, the dog. Her gaze snapped toward the small bundle near the dumpster. The blanket was still there, but it had shifted slightly. A tiny nose peeked out from beneath it. Lily let out a breath of relief. The dog was alive. Slowly, she pushed herself up, her limbs trembling from exhaustion. She shuffled forward, reaching out to touch the blanket, just to make sure. The dog stirred at her touch, his eyes fluttering open. For the first time, Lily saw something different in them. Before, they had been filled with fear, with desperation. But now there was something else. Trust. He nudged his head against her hand, his tiny tail giving the faintest wag. A weak laugh escaped Lily's lips. "Hey, buddy," she whispered. "You made it." The dog blinked at her, stretching slightly before curling back into the warmth of the blanket. Lily's smile faded as she sat back against the cold pavement. She had helped him, but she had no idea how to help herself. Her stomach churned, empty and aching. Her body was weak, her hands shaking from more than just the cold now. She needed food. She needed warmth. But most of all, she needed hope. Lily pulled her knees to her chest, sitting on the curb as people started to flood the streets. The city was waking up. Cars honked. Shopkeepers opened their doors. The scent of fresh bread and coffee filled the air, making her stomach twist with hunger. People walked past her without a second glance. She was invisible again, just another homeless kid. She rubbed her frozen hands together, trying to shake off the numbness. The dog, still wrapped in the blanket, had curled up beside her. Then, something unexpected happened. A man walked past, then suddenly stopped. Lily barely noticed at first, but then she saw his shoes turn. He was coming back. She tensed. Strangers rarely meant anything good. She kept her head down, avoiding eye contact, hoping he would just move on. But he didn't. "You're the girl from last night, aren't you?" Lily frowned. Her throat was dry. I don't know what you mean." The man crouched down to her level, his expression gentle. "I saw what you did. You gave your only blanket to that dog." Her heart pounded. Someone had been watching. She swallowed hard, unsure if this was good or bad. The man smiled. "That was the kindest thing I've ever seen, and kindness deserves to be rewarded." Lily shook her head. "I don't need anything. I just didn't want him to freeze." The man's smile grew. "Even more reason why you deserve this." She stiffened as he reached into his pocket. Her instincts screamed at her to run. But then, he pulled out something unexpected, a business card. "I run a shelter for homeless kids. We provide food, clothes, and a safe place to stay. Would you like to come with me?" Lily's breath caught in her throat. A place to stay, a warm bed. Was this real? Her mind raced. Could she trust him? She had learned the hard way that kindness often came with a price. But what if this was real? She looked at the dog. He was still weak, still too fragile to survive another night on the streets. She bit her lip. "Can I bring the dog?" The man chuckled. "Of course. Anyone with a heart like yours belongs at our shelter." Tears welled in Lily's eyes. She didn't know why she believed him. Maybe it was the way he looked at her, like she wasn't just another forgotten soul on the streets. Maybe it was hope, real, undeniable hope. For the first time in a long time, she had a choice. And for the first time in a long time, she felt like she wasn't alone. She nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. The man stood, offering her his hand. Lily hesitated. Then, she reached out and took it. And just like that, her life changed forever. Lily followed the man through the busy streets, carrying the small dog in her arms. The weight of him was light, but the significance of this moment was heavy. For the first time in a long time, she was walking toward something, instead of just running from everything. The city around them buzzed with life. Cars honked, people rushed past, neon lights flickered against the darkening sky. But Lily barely noticed. All she could focus on was the steady sound of the man's footsteps ahead of her and the warm, fragile body of the little dog against her chest. The dog, Lucky. She had whispered the name to him just moments before, and though he was weak, his tiny tail had wagged in response. He was lucky to be alive, and maybe, just maybe, she was too. But doubt gnawed at the edges of her mind. She had been let down before. What if this was another false hope? What if this man, this so-called kind stranger, wasn't who he seemed to be? She had learned the hard way that kindness wasn't always free. Lily swallowed, gripping Lucky just a little tighter. She had to be careful. The streets began to change. The tall, cold skyscrapers faded behind them as they entered a quieter neighborhood. The sidewalks weren't littered with trash. The air smelled fresher here. The buildings were smaller, older, but welcoming. Lily's steps slowed. Her body was screaming at her to stop. The exhaustion from the night before, the hunger twisting in her gut, it all weighed her down. But she forced herself forward. Lucky needed her. And if this place was real, if it truly was a shelter, then maybe she needed it too. The man glanced back at her, his pace slowing to match hers. "We're almost there," he said, his voice calm. Lily just nodded. She didn't trust words. Words could be lies. She would believe it when she saw it. When they finally reached the shelter, Lily felt her breath catch. It wasn't what she expected. The building was old, but not in a bad way. It had character. Brick walls covered in ivy, a wooden door with chipped paint. A large sign above it read, "St. Catherine's Home for Children." Her heart pounded. It was real. The man pushed open the door, stepping inside. Warmth immediately rushed out, wrapping around Lily like a hug. She hesitated on the threshold. What if this was a trick? What if, the moment she stepped inside, she wouldn't be allowed to leave? As if sensing her fear, Lucky nudged his cold nose against her wrist. Lily took a deep breath and stepped in. The inside of the shelter was nothing like the streets. A fireplace crackled in the corner, filling the room with a soft, golden glow. The scent of fresh bread and something warm, soup maybe, filled the air. Children sat at a long wooden table, eating and laughing. A few glanced up when they saw her, their faces full of curiosity, but not unkindness. There were soft blankets folded neatly on bunks, books stacked on shelves. Everything about this place felt safe. Lily's legs almost buckled beneath her. She had spent so long fighting to survive, so long believing no one cared. And yet, here was a place where someone had thought about kids like her. It was overwhelming. The man, noticing her hesitation, smiled. "Come on," he said gently. "Let's get you and Lucky settled." Lily sat at the edge of the long table, a steaming bowl of soup in front of her. She stared at it, unsure of what to do. It had been so long since she had eaten a real meal. Her stomach ached with hunger. but her hands trembled when she reached for the spoon. What if this was a mistake? What if they changed their minds and told her to leave? The man from before, who had introduced himself as Daniel, sat across from her, watching her carefully. "You don't have to rush," he said, his voice kind. "Take your time." Lily swallowed hard, then took a small sip. The warmth spread through her like a spark of life. She hadn't realized how much she missed this feeling. Lucky, now curled up in a small basket beside her, let out a soft sigh. He was full too. One of the shelter workers had given him some food and water, and for the first time, he looked like he believed he was safe. Lily placed a hand on his tiny body. They had made it. When night fell, Lily was shown to a small room with a simple bed, a real bed. She ran her fingers over the soft blankets, barely believing it. She had spent the past year sleeping on cold pavement, under bridges, in abandoned buildings, anywhere she could find shelter. But tonight, she had a bed, a safe place. Lucky jumped up beside her, curling into a small ball at the foot of the bed. Lily lay down, staring at the ceiling. Her body was still tense, still waiting for something to go wrong, but nothing did. She turned onto her side, looking at Lucky. She reached out, running her fingers through his soft fur. "You saved me too, buddy," she whispered. His tail wagged in response, and for the first time in a long, long time, Lily closed her eyes and let herself sleep. The next morning, Lily woke up to something unfamiliar. Sunlight streaming through the window, the smell of breakfast cooking downstairs, the sound of laughter. For a moment, she panicked. She wasn't used to this, wasn't used to feeling safe. But then she remembered the shelter, Daniel, Lucky. She sat up, running a hand through her messy hair. Lucky lifted his head, blinking up at her sleepily. She smiled. Maybe, just maybe this was real. Maybe this was the beginning of something new. Lily had never believed in miracles. She had spent too many nights alone, curled up against the biting cold, feeling invisible in a world that never seemed to care. She had learned, at a painfully young age, that survival meant expecting nothing from anyone. Yet here she was, sitting in the shelter's small courtyard, feeling the warmth of the morning sun on her face. She realized something had shifted inside her. She wasn't alone anymore. Not truly. Lucky lay beside her, his tiny body rising and falling in a peaceful rhythm. His fur, once matted and dirty, was now soft and clean. He looked like a different dog altogether, no longer a helpless stray, but a beloved companion. Lily reached out, running her fingers through his fur, and for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to believe. Maybe life wasn't just about surviving. Maybe it was about finding a place to belong. And maybe, just maybe, kindness had a way of finding its way back to those who gave it freely. Before the shelter, mornings had been the hardest part of Lily's day. She used to wake up on cold sidewalks, her body aching from sleeping on the hard ground. Some days, she would be woken by the sounds of people rushing past her, ignoring her, pretending she didn't exist. Other days, she was forced to move before store owners could chase her away. But this morning was different. She had woken up in a warm bed, with a soft pillow beneath her head. She had woken up to the sound of laughter, to the smell of breakfast being made in the kitchen. It still felt strange, like she had stepped into someone else's life, a better life. She hesitated before getting out of bed, half expecting someone to tell her this was all a mistake, that she wasn't supposed to be here. But no one did. Instead, a kind woman from the shelter staff greeted her with a smile and led her to the dining hall, where a plate of warm pancakes waited for her. Lily had never tasted something so simple yet so comforting. As she ate, she looked around at the other children, kids who had stories like hers, kids who had once been alone, just like she had, yet now they laughed. They shared jokes. They talked about silly things, like cartoons and favorite foods. For the first time, Lily wondered, could she be part of this? Could this be her life now? The hardest thing wasn't adjusting to the shelter's routines. It wasn't even sleeping in a bed or eating warm meals. The hardest thing was allowing herself to believe that this was real. Lily had spent so long guarding herself against disappointment that trusting people felt impossible. At first, she kept to herself. She barely spoke, barely interacted. She was polite, but distant. It wasn't that she didn't appreciate the kindness. She just didn't know how to accept it. But Lucky had no such reservations. From the moment they arrived, he had embraced his new life. He wagged his tail at every new person he met, licked hands, and let himself be held without hesitation. He had suffered just as much as she had, yet he was so quick to trust. Lily envied that. She wanted to trust, too. One afternoon, about a week after arriving, Lily was sitting alone in the shelter's common room, flipping through an old book. she had found on the shelves. She wasn't really reading, just staring at the words, letting her mind drift. That's when she noticed one of the younger kids, a boy no older than 7, sitting a few feet away. He had been staring at Lucky for a while, his small hands fidgeting with the hem of his shirt. Lily sighed. She wasn't used to people approaching her, but she could see the quiet longing in the boy's eyes. Without a word, she patted the floor beside her. The boy's eyes widened, as if he couldn't believe she was inviting him. But after a moment, he scooted closer. Lucky, being the friendly little creature he was, immediately climbed into the boy's lap, making him giggle. For the first time since arriving, Lily smiled. She didn't realize it then, but that small moment, letting someone in, was the beginning of something bigger. Days turned into weeks. Slowly, Lily began to let her guard down. She started talking to the other kids. She helped clean up after meals. She even joined them when they played outside. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living, and for the first time in over a year, she felt something she had thought was lost forever. She felt like she belonged. One day, Daniel, the man who had brought her to the shelter, sat down with her on one of the benches outside. "You've changed a lot since you first got here," he said with a small smile. Lily looked down, tracing circles on the wooden surface of the bench. "I guess, you know," Daniel continued, "it's funny how things work out. You gave away your only blanket that night, and in return, you ended up here." Lily thought about that. She had given away something small, just a blanket. She hadn't done it expecting anything in return, but somehow, that single act of kindness had led her to this moment, had led her to a home, to Lucky, to people who cared. Daniel's voice softened. "Sometimes, when we think we have nothing, we actually have the most to give." Lily looked over at Lucky, who was curled up in a sunny patch of grass, his little tail wagging in his sleep. Maybe Daniel was right. Maybe kindness really did come full circle. Lily didn't know what the future held. She still had a long way to go. There were still nights when she woke up in a panic, thinking she was back on the streets. There were still moments when she doubted if she truly deserved this new life. But she wasn't alone anymore, and that made all the difference. One evening, as she sat outside watching the sunset, Lucky curled up beside her. She made a silent promise to herself. One day, she would do for someone else what Daniel had done for her. One day, she would pass the kindness forward, because in the end, the smallest acts of kindness can lead to the biggest miracles. Lily had started with nothing, no home, no family, no hope. Yet one small decision, to give away her only blanket, had changed her life in ways she never could have imagined. Not only had she found safety, but she had also found something even greater. A second chance, a place to belong, a reason to believe in kindness again. And Lucky, he had found exactly what he had always been searching for. A home, because, in the end, kindness always comes full circle. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring stories like this.